We begin by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And before we start, let's drink a little refreshing water. Alhamdulillah. Now let's begin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our story today happened in one of the Arab countries, and because I've been facing many problems lately with this kind of stories, and because the family involved doesn't want their names mentioned, nor do they want anyone to know which country this story happened in, we will respect their privacy completely. We won't mention the country, and we changed all the names so no trouble reaches them. But what I can confirm is that today's story truly breaks the heart, and what happened in it is something almost impossible for anyone to handle. Imagine, in one house, two women lived together, but their hearts never came together. And when a boy named Saleh was born, everything in that house changed. Saleh was the only light in his mother's life. The boy who came after years of pain and jealousy. She loved him deeply. He was the light of her eyes. But there were other eyes in that same house, eyes that didn't love Saleh, eyes that didn't even want to see him. And one day, Saleh almost burned alive. All right, I know. Now you want to skip the intro and leave. Wait, people, we didn't agree on that. I know my intros have been short lately, and I always spoil you with long openings, but not today. I don't want to spoil anything for you, so come with me and let's see what happened to Saleh. As I said, our story happened in one of the Arab countries. There was a girl named Layla and a young man named Muzayyid. They were cousins. But Layla saw something more in Muzayyid. She loved him deeply, adored him. He was the love of her life, the dream she carried since childhood. And when they grew older, her dream finally came true. Muzayyid's mother proposed, and Layla married him. After marriage, Allah blessed them with 3 daughters, each one more beautiful than the other, and the house filled with joy and warmth. Noura, the eldest, smart, independent, strong like her father Muzayyid. Su'ad, the quiet and gentle one who preferred spending time alone like her mother Layla. And little Fatima, the innocent soul who brought peace to the home. And even with all this beauty in his life, Muzayyid still felt a void inside him. A void no daughter, no matter how precious, could fill. Society's pressure kept growing on him. Everywhere he went, people asked him the same question. Where is the son? When will the heir arrive? Who will carry your name? That toxic pressure pushed him to his limit. Finally, he confronted Layla and told her, I want to get married again. I want a son. I tried with you many times, but it seems you cannot give birth to boys. Layla stood in shock. It felt as if the entire house fell on her head. She didn't scream, didn't argue. She just went silent, as if something inside her died. At the end, she left the house without asking for a divorce. After she left, Muzayyid married a woman named Intisar, kind, humble, soft-hearted, and after a year she gave birth to a boy, Saleh. At that moment, Muzayyid felt the heavy weight on his chest vanish. He laughed and cried at the same time from overwhelming relief.
From that moment on, Sayala became the center of Muzayyid's world. He carried him everywhere, showed him to everyone, and finally felt he had the heir people kept demanding. But what Muzayyid didn't see was what was happening inside the house. Because while Intisar treated the 3 girls with kindness and respect, not everyone around them accepted Sayala's arrival. Noura, the eldest, tried to act strong, but inside she felt her father slipping away from them. Suad quietly watched everything, storing her pain inside, while little Fatima didn't understand anything except that her father didn't smile at her the same way anymore. And far away, Lila, alone in her parents' house, spent every night crying, imagining her daughters sleeping without her and imagining another woman raising them. She prayed for them, prayed for her broken heart, and prayed that Muzayyid would remember the years she stood beside him. Time passed, and jealousy slowly grew inside some hearts. The house that once was full of laughter became heavy with whispers, tension, and hidden anger. Some relatives began treating Intisar differently, others spoiled Sayala excessively, and some compared him non-stop to the daughters. Meanwhile, Muzayyid became blind to everything except his son. He didn't notice the loneliness creeping into his daughters' hearts, nor the cracks forming in the family. And as Sayala grew older, something strange began to happen. Every time trouble occurred in the house, somehow Sayala was always at the center of it. Not because he was guilty, but because someone wanted to make him appear guilty. One night, everything reached its peak. A scream filled the house. Sayala's room was on fire. Intisar rushed inside without thinking, flames lighting up the walls, smoke filling the air as she wrapped Sayala in a blanket and ran out with him. Muzayyid collapsed in panic, holding his traumatized son. And while they all tried to put the pieces together, one terrifying question began haunting everyone. Was this accident? Or did someone try to get rid of Sayala? Muzayyid fell to his knees, thanking God for finally giving him a son. And from the very day little Saleh was born, he stayed beside Intisar's hospital bed, smiling, overwhelmed with the joy he had waited for years. After she gave him Saleh, she later gave birth to 2 more daughters, Badur and Salama. Years passed, and Lila eventually softened. She decided to return home under strict conditions. She would stay on the ground floor, and Intisar, with her children, would remain upstairs, never coming down, never crossing paths. Muzayyid accepted immediately, telling her she could take the whole house if she wanted, because without her, the house had lost its light. But once the house was split, a strange feeling settled in, a heavy presence of bitterness, tension, and silent watching. The only bridge of love between the 2 floors was Fatima, Lila's daughter, who adored Saleh and played with him constantly. He loved her too, and the years went on. Lila, however, noticed how much Muzayyid leaned toward Intisar, the wife who gave him the son he always wanted, and she silently suffered. Then Intisar began falling mysteriously ill, vomiting, stomach pain, high fever, fatigue, yet every test came back normal, confusing every doctor. Through it all, Saleh stayed by her side, giving her medicine, reciting Quran for her every night. By 16, he had become the pride of the family, polite, brilliant in school, a memorizer of Quran who finished it every month, beloved by his teachers, humble, respectful, never raising his eyes to elders and helping everyone at home, even cleaning without complaint. One day, while Intisar was hospitalized from worsening symptoms, Muzayyid went to visit her, leaving Saleh at home with his sisters. When he returned 2 hours later, the house was unusually quiet. He found Fatima with Badur and Selama, and he asked, "Where's Saleh?" Fatima answered that he had stepped outside because someone was waiting for him, promising to return soon. but he never came back. Panic filled Muzayyid's chest. This was unlike Saleh. He never disappeared, never stayed out without a word, especially with his sisters alone in the house. Hours passed. Midnight turned to 3 a.m. Muzayyid sat in the living room, unable to blink, praying the door would open. Yet the house remained silent. The next morning, still no sign of Saleh. Muzayyid filed a missing report, trembling inside, asking himself over and over, "Where is my son? Where is my only boy?" Meanwhile, Intisar had no idea. When Muzayyid visited her, she immediately asked for Saleh, why he hadn't come, why he hadn't visited her as he always did. Unable to break her heart, Muzayyid lied, saying Saleh was tired and had slept early, and that as soon as he woke up, he'd come to her. But Intisar sensed something wrong in his eyes, fear, panic, something he was hiding. But she forced herself to believe him. Hours passed, but Saleh never appeared, and Intisar grew anxious, constantly asking why her son hadn't come. Finally, Muzayyid could no longer hold the lie. A single tear fell, revealing everything. Intisar collapsed into grief, crying uncontrollably, refusing to eat, refusing medication, saying she no longer wanted to live. "Either I see my son or I die." She fainted from crying, woke up screaming, and eventually begged Muzayyid to take her home. She couldn't stand being in the hospital while not knowing where her child was. Muzayyid signed the responsibility papers and took her home. The moment she arrived, Intisar went straight to Saleh's room, lying on his bed, holding his pillow, crying as if her soul was leaving her body, whispering that she only wanted to smell her son again.
Days went by, and Intisar kept breaking down into sudden episodes of crying, until one day she collapsed again and fainted. They rushed her back to the hospital, where doctors said she suffered from severe malnutrition, a nervous breakdown, and an overwhelming grief that was far from normal. They gave her medications and IV fluids, then sent her home again. She moved around the house like a ghost, her mind lost, spending 24 hours inside Saleh's room, hugging his clothes and sobbing, whispering, "Saleh, please come back to me. Please, for God's sake, bring back my son. How did he disappear like that, as if the earth opened and swallowed him whole?" Since the night Saleh vanished, nobody had seen him. Not in school, not on the school trip, not at Quran circles, not even the Quran he kept by his bedside was touched again. His friends hadn't seen him, and even his family had no clue where he went. Saleh was simply gone, leaving behind a void no one could fill. Neighbors said that on the day he disappeared, they had seen him standing at the door of the house, but no one knew what happened after that. When his friends were questioned, they swore they had no idea where he was. Then one day, one friend finally spoke up, terrified, saying he knew something no one else did. He said that shortly before the disappearance, Saleh had fought with a boy during a school trip, and that boy threatened him, saying, "Just wait, I'll get you. I'm going to kill you." But when the investigation reached that boy, it turned out he wasn't even in the city the day Saleh vanished. He was traveling with his family to another town. Their only lead collapsed, proving the boy had nothing to do with Saleh's disappearance. Intisar's condition worsened, and they took her back to the hospital, where she stayed for a long while before returning home again, weak, heartbroken, stripped of spirit. She entered the house and froze in the middle of the living room, staring at the walls, the furniture, searching for Saleh's face, for the sound of his footsteps, his laughter echoing from afar. Her daughters would hide behind the door, watching their mother fall apart, not knowing how to comfort her,
because they too were hurting, lost, and longing for Saleh. Intisar wandered the house like a shadow, no eating, no drinking, just moving from room to room searching for her son. Her daughters said that at night, when the house fell silent, they heard her crying from Saleh's room, heard her choking on sobs as she begged, "Give me back my son. Take my whole life if you want. Just bring Saleh back." They didn't know how to help her. Time passed. Years slipped by, and after heavy insistence from Muzayyid, Intisar agreed, unwillingly, to stay with Layla, his first wife, so she wouldn't be alone, so there would be people around her to distract her from the pain. But she could never forget. She stayed at Layla's house, but she hated it. Every moment felt heavier than the last, suffocating her. Then, one day, Intisar suddenly snapped, lunging at Layla, grabbing her by the throat and choking her, screaming, "You're the reason! You're the reason Saleh died!" Layla screamed for help as her daughters Noura and Suad ran to save her. Chaos took over the house until Muzayyid's mother walked in. Muzayyid pulled Intisar away and shouted, "What's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Why did you attack her?" Through tears, Intisar cried, "They're insulting me. They said I killed Saleh. How could I kill my own son? Saleh is my child, my soul." Layla, holding her bruised neck, cried hysterically, "She's lying. She's accusing me for nothing. She's crazy. She tried to kill me, and now she's blaming me." The entire house broke, all crying, shocked, shattered. And 4 years after that incident, one quiet day, Intisar passed away, with Saleh's shirt held tightly in her hands.
After Intisar's death, Badur and Salama, the two younger girls, were left orphaned. Fatima, their half-sister from their father, took care of them, acting as their mother. She protected and supported her sisters, ensuring they stayed together in the family bond. During this time, Muzayyid began suffering unexplained physical ailments, often hospitalized with stomach pain, never understanding what was happening to him. Years passed, and the girls grew up. Noura married and traveled with her sick husband to another province, taking her 2 daughters, while Saad married, divorced, and had a daughter with special needs whom she raised with care. Fatima remained much the same, still carrying the grief of Saleh's disappearance. Muzayyid aged in sorrow, haunted by the loss of his son, sleeping in Saleh's room, the only place he could feel close to him. Then tragedy struck again. Noura, her husband, and her 2 daughters died in a severe accident while returning home. Muzayyid returned home, devastated, crying and shouting. Soon after, Saad's child, a boy with autism, ran into the street and was killed by a passing car while Saad rested. Saad could not bear the grief and was later found dead in her bed, her body overcome by despair. Fatima, too, faced tragedy. Her husband was executed after killing a man in a dispute, despite efforts to pay compensation. When she received the news of her husband's death, Fatima was devastated, and Layla collapsed from shock, hospitalized with severe bleeding and a weak body, old and near the end of her life. Muzayyid, meanwhile, was alive, but emotionally dead, powerless to protect his family as they fell one by one. In the hospital at 3 a.m., he was awakened by Layla, who confessed to him that she, along with her daughters Noura and Saad, had caused Saleh's death, revealing how they buried him alive under a tree in the garden, striking him to silence his cries.
Muzayyad was paralyzed with grief. Lila further confessed that she had cursed Intisar, causing her illness and suffering, and claimed responsibility for Muzayyad's physical decline. After her death, Muzayyad, in despair, went to Saleh's grave in the garden and discovered a skull, recognizing it as his son's, 15 years after his disappearance. Police confirmed the identity through DNA, and forensic examination revealed that Saleh had been buried alive, the skull showing signs of trauma from a blunt instrument, with traces of soil and gravel inside. Lila died during surgery for a stomach tumor. Muzayyad continued his life quietly, burdened by grief, while Fatima cared for her sisters, keeping the memory of Saleh alive as a symbol of love and light amidst tragedy. This story reminds us that life's hardships often come with lessons, that blessings should not be taken for granted, and that divine timing governs all events, giving each individual only as much responsibility as they can bear. Even amid immense suffering, gratitude and patience remain our guiding lights, as everything given by God carries both challenge and purpose.